Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so we are officially continuing with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean, and my reviews of them. So, this episode, The Visitor. Well, this one is kind of sort of has an A plot and a B plot to it. So the first part of it is its own thing. I'm going to hazard a guess and say that it wasn't beefy enough from the I'm going to guess that the storyline wasn't beefy enough from the manga to fully adapt into a full episode, but it's because it shares another part of the episode with another story arc, The Visitor, which comes immediately after. So it's named after The Visitor, but this episode, The Visitor Part 1, essentially sets up the idea of Jolyne figuring out how to, kind of keep her money in the prison. We'll get to that in a minute, but also it's something else that I'm not going to give away right away. But in case, the episode does, of course, open up with Jolyne kind of thinking through her options now that she realizes she has a stand. She's trying to figure out what her abilities for, how Stone Free actually works. Explaining that it has the abilities that as she explains it, she knows it can be compressed into a short range stand, which is more powerful, but not powerful enough to seemingly break her out of prison. But also, because of its strings, it's also a long range stand. It can be used for reconnaissance and other kinds of things. So she does point out that it does have its uses, but she doesn't know enough about its uses yet to kind of demonstrate what its abilities could possibly be. All she knows is that it's strong enough to bend metal, which she does realize could be useful. Like, not to this point where she can bend metal bars, but enough that she can crush a small can or something. Like, that's essentially what her abilities are. But as she's kind of thinking through her options to herself, a blonde prisoner, a blonde woman, comes to her and asks her for money. Essentially, this woman is waiting in line, is on the phone. She needs $1 to pay for the phone and asks Jolyne for it. Jolyne, of course, happily gives her the $1, pointing out that she's probably not going to miss it. And of course, the prisoner says that she's a real lifesaver and that she'll be more than happy to pay her back. But and of course, it's also implied that Jolyne was waiting for a return on the phone, but as she goes to get on the phone, the curly-haired prisoner that runs the cafeteria pushes her out of the way, and then proceeds to take up the phone instead. And of course, this prisoner, the curly-haired prisoner, that proceeds to accuse her of cutting in front of cutting a line. Jolyne, of course, is bewildered, pointing out the obvious that that this person was in fact not waiting in line, pointing out that she'd been waiting here for a long time, but the prisoner then proceeds to explain how the phones and all the wait time and stuff actually works. That you need to actually reserve a phone, and that they're usually reserved months in advance. Because, there's a lot of, for the obvious reason, there's a lot of prisoners that need to use the phone. So, I'm assuming that's the kind of system that they're supposed to have in place. But Jolyne, of course, points out the obvious that makes no sense. That it would take that it literally is. You're doing a phone call for 5 minutes. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to wait a month to get to use the phone. But of course, the prisoner does point out that that's the interesting thing about waiting for the phone, and is pointing out that you can't, and it's demonstrated that you can in fact buy and sell phone time in the prison as well, because another prisoner comes over to her, asks her if she can use the phone, and then they exchange money and she's allowed to. So Jolyne, realizing the obvious that she wanted to call her mom, but realizing that's probably not going to happen now because there's other people that are using the phone. I've been realizing now how the phones and getting in line for the phones actually works. She of course leaves. At which point she's approached by Gwess. Of course, Jolyne, fully remembering their confrontation in the previous episode, does point out that she doesn't really want anything to do with Gwess and tells her to leave her alone. But Gwess then proceeds to explain to Jolyne that she's actually trying to warn her. And of course, at which point, of course, when Jolyne is, of course, confused as to what Gwess is talking about, at which point Gwess explains what Jolyne did with the dollar is kind of dangerous. She proceeds to explain that in prison, it is generally not a good idea to give away your money so freely. Of course, Jolyne points out the obvious that it's just $1 and the woman said she'd pay her back, but of course, Gwess then proceeds to point out that is the exact opposite of the kind of mindset you should be having in prison. At which point she proceeds to explain that, she was watching the conversation. She was watching the whole conversation. She understood that the woman, said that it would be in her that it would likely be in her cell because if she would have her cell, so like she would have the money in her cell, so obviously she would go and get it. But does point out that the woman clearly doesn't give a rat's ass about Jolyne, because the woman just went up to her cell and then didn't come back for Jolyne, which implies that she is in fact not going to actually pay the dollar forward. So and this of course causes Jolyne to realize that maybe Gwess has a point, and Gwess does point out that yes, it maybe seem like $1 now, but unfortunately word does spread in prison. So eventually she does point out that you could very well become someone's punching bag, and that everybody will start extorting you for money to keep you from getting your money, getting your money's worth, taking their money from you, and essentially just like bullies would do in a high school setting, but in prison. And of course this is demonstrated by another prisoner, a mousy girl who is of course bullied by two prisoners, one of which has cornrows in her hair. We'll get to that in a minute. And she of course proceed to bully her and take her money from her. So yeah, Jolyne realizes that yes, she does need to figure out a way to get her dollar back almost immediately, and does of course go with Gwess to the library where she knows the woman is next. She goes to go and confront the woman. Of course, the woman is just kind of sitting down in the library of the prison's library, reading a book. Which, of course, I should mention something really funny. All the books are actually puns based on different, actual real world literature. They aren't allowed to use real world literature in the anime. In the manga, they have no problem with that. So, because and obviously that's the source of a lot of stands, because they put a lot of musical influence in the anime as well, in the manga as well, that then need to be localized for the anime, which I should mention in this review, did cause me some confusion starting out, because I didn't realize that they were supposed to be bands, but and I didn't realize, oh, I know this, and then it got to people I knew, and it was like, oh, these are supposed to be bands, I understand. But in any case, long story short, they're not allowed to use the actual book titles in the anime, so they changed them to be general approximations of the title, but not an exact match. So so they're meant to be references and puns, but not exact matches, which makes sense given the anime is a little bit more stricter because it has to air internationally and other things, whereas to my knowledge, Hirohiko Araki is able to self-publishes these in Shonen Jump, so he doesn't really have that problem. But in any case, Jolyne confronts the woman who she gave the dollar to, and of course, the woman does try to strike up a friendly conversation with Jolyne, showing her the book she's reading and pointing out that it's a very lovely read, and asks Jolyne if she's ever read it. Jolyne, of course, does point out that it does seem like an interesting read, but then kind of cuts to the chase, pointing out the obvious that, she does indeed want her dollar back. So, the woman, of course, points out that, obviously, she can't pay the dollar right now, she doesn't have it on her, but Jolyne does point out that she did go back to her cell, which means that she should have gone back to should have picked up the money that she owes Jolyne, and came back with it. But of course, when the woman realizes she's being called out, immediately confronts Jolyne very, very aggressively, and to try and make an example of her, I should mention, because there's other prisoners, including the mousy girl and the cornrows prisoner in the library with them. I'll get to them in a minute again, but she does make it very clear, calling Jolyne out for being such a stickler, that she would be so adamant about the fact that she needs to pay back a single dollar, And then also to kind of make it a point that, you know, Jolyne is clearly now her, to put it nicely, Jolyne is now her, obviously her, you know, quote unquote piggy bank. I want to say something else, but I'm not going to. It's a YouTube video. But yeah, it's essentially she goes to aggressively accuse Jolyne. She goes to aggressively call Jolyne out for, you know, both being so insistent that she pay back the dollar, but then also tries to extort more money from Jolyne and asks her for another $10. Jolyne, of course, now realizes what Wes was talking about, and then proceeds to seemingly at first backing down, then proceeds to go to the bathroom. The woman, of course, is very smug, and all the prisoners seem in the library seem to think that, oh, Jolyne's a pushover. She'll give you money if you make her. But in actuality, that's not what happens. As Jolyne is actually physically going into the bathroom, it's then revealed that she used Stone Free to break down a coin into powder, and is now using its abilities to turn into string to transfer it from her hand into the woman's cup of, I'm not sure what she drinks, I think tea, but she pours it in. She pours the broken down coin into the woman's tea, which very predictably gives the woman the runs. Of course, the woman immediately realizes something's wrong and immediately goes to the bathroom to bang on it and get Jolyne out of there. We find out Jolyne isn't actually using the bathroom. She very much knows that she's in the position of power here. So she just sits down with a book in the library's bathroom. She just kind of sits down very smugly and is like, "Oh, well, you said you would pay back the dollar whenever you're." This woman is, of course, banging on the door, pointing out that, you know, that she'll pay back Jolyne's dollar, no problem, if she lets her use the bathroom. But of course, Jolyne points out, "Oh no, you pay it back whenever you want. I'm in no hurry." But meanwhile, she's in the position of power. She is sitting in the bathroom that the woman needs to actively use. So the woman, and of course, the woman can't just leave to go to another bathroom because they're in prison. There's a gate on the doors. They can't just leave and go find another bathroom. They need a guard to escort them specifically. But of course the woman proceeds to beg Jolyne. At which point she offers Jolyne $10 in exchange for the, you know, of course, in exchange for the toilet. Jolyne, of course, immediately goes, "Sold!" and just slams the door right in the woman's face. At which point she proceeds to snatch up the $10 from the woman and lets her go to the bathroom, but does tell her that she's not going to be, but then makes it very clear that she's not going to be anybody's pushover, because she proceeds to actively flaunt the dollar in front of the entire room. She very much shows that, hey, I can extort my own money and get it back. You do not want to mess with me. So yeah, making it very clear to the other prisoners, she is not a woman to be messed with. But then proceeds to approach the mousy prisoner, and then proceeds to tell her that she advises the woman to go to the bathroom next. At which point, which of course the woman doesn't fully understand what she's talking about, but then realizes the cornrow bully starts to double over in pain as well, and it's very clear that that woman also has the runs. So the woman proceeds. So of course this of course makes the mousy girl realize, oh, Jolyne's looking out for me. So Jolyne, of course, then proceeds to explain that yes, she's laying out the steps for the mousy-haired prisoner to kind of, you know, assert herself again, but does point out that, you know, it's up to the woman to ultimately, you know, assert herself, to ultimately get her own money back, and then proceeds to put it on their head that she's not going to be here forever and that she is eventually going to escape. At which point she, of course, approaches the bars and then proceeds to use the keypad, calling for a person transfer so that she can, you know, get out of the library. But of course, as she's waiting for the guard to, you know, eventually come and let her out of the library, she sees a baseball, and then a strange boy in a Cubs uniform, which of course she has no idea. She's of course very confused. She has no idea how a child got into the building. But this woman, but of course, starts looking around, trying to figure out where this guy, who this boy is, and where he came from. But the boy then proceeds to explain rather ominously that she's going to be getting a visitor soon. But then tells her that she can't go to the visiting room because it could result in a lot of people getting hurt. Of course, Jolyne has no idea who this kid is, but is very visibly confused as to first and foremost how this person got into the room, and got into the prison, but also who this person even is at all. Like, why is this person here? But of course, the boy just once again insists that Jolyne can't go to the visiting room when she's told. But and of course Jolyne is so busy engaging with the boy that she doesn't even notice that the guard that's come to let her out is hollering at her and insisting that she needs to let her out and back away from the doors. So she of course does point out that asked the prison guard if he did indeed see a small boy wandering around the halls just now. But the man just insists that she steps back and hits her on the hand, which causes her to of course back away. But then he hits her again when she's backed away from the bars. So, which causes her to, of course, immediately pass out because he hits her way too hard, and ultimately, as she passes out, her eyes start to close, but she sees something interesting in the corner. I don't know what that is, but it's clearly something because your eye is supposed to be drawn to it. But she then proceeds to pass out. Meanwhile, in the man's side of the prison, we are introduced to a strange blind man covered in tattoos who is currently finishing up his shower. As he's finishing his shower, he and is putting his clothes back on. A $10 bill falls out of his pocket, which he immediately maneuvers his shoe to catch, and then immediately puts his jacket on. It's established that this man seemingly blind because he has. We'll get to that in a minute, but he can't see very well. But of course, we'll get to that. We'll get to that, of course, in a minute. But as he does get dressed and leaves the shower, he is approached by a prison guard who explains that there's going to be a visitor, but not for him, or at least that's the intel anyway. At which point it's revealed that that this man and the prison guard have some sort of arrangement, and the guy then proceeds to pull the $10 bill out of his shoe, hands it to the prison guard, and walks off. It's not clear right away who this guy is, but of course, shortly after Jolyne passes out, and she proceeds to go to get lunch after being attacked by the prison guard. That guard again comes back. He comes back with a pair of handcuffs. He accidentally wraps her on the knuckle with it, which he had previously beaten the hell out of, I should mention. So she has a bandage, but this guy shows up. But this guy once again shows up. He of course then proceeds to apologize for hitting Jolyne as hard as he did. He didn't mean to. But of course Jolyne then proceeds to point out that no, she mutters under her breath that it wasn't simply that he hit her repeatedly when she backed away even after she backed away from the bars. But because she mutters under her breath, the guard doesn't really hear it, kind of asking her to wonder what she's talking about. She then proceeds to explain that's nothing. Proceeds to go on to ask him why he's here, which putting out there has to be some sort of reason if a guard is approaching her. At which point the guard proceeds to explain that she has a visitor, and of course this causes her to become a little confused and a little more concerned because the boy then explained to her that she can't go meet with a visitor, but the man does point out that he's going to issue standard protocol, which is to handcuff her hands and escort her to the visiting room. So he does proceed to do that. He proceeds to bring her to the visiting room, tells her to stand on the this spot that is marked with footprints, but decorative footprints, I should mention, but still, you know what I'm talking about, the ones that are painted on the floor, one of those. but she brings her to the prison visiting. He brings her to the prison visiting room, then proceeds to explain the rules. That obviously, that obviously she's not allowed to have anything that are brought in there during the visit because it needs to be inspected by the prison. But also, that hand-holding is okay, but kissing and undressing is not. And the reason for this is not explained, but in the manga it's apparently because it's his entire explanation, I should mention, is longer in the manga. In the manga they explain that they're not allowed to do this because, you know, they could be hiding something and transferring something, but it's implied that there's some sort of romantic reason. Without that context, it's a romantically implied thing, but with the context is that, oh, we don't want you exchanging things you're not supposed to. So yeah, that's essentially what the entire idea is. But ultimately he then proceeds to go in and make sure that the visiting room is ultimately prepped for Jolyne's visit. At which point she goes inside. And Jolyne is, of course, believes that this person could possibly be her mother. So she's actually kind of excited to meet this visitor, but then she is grabbed by a hand from the trash can. And, of course, inside the trash can is the same boy from before, who once again warns her that she can't go and meet with this prisoner. Pointing out that and of course, this is this point where Jolyne does have a prolonged conversation with the person to try and figure out who this person is, wondering, you know, who this person is, why they're how they even got into the prison in the first place. But the kid then explains that that's not really important, and pointing out that, you know, he's been here in the prison long enough to know that there are things worse than death, and that he doesn't fully understand what's going on, but that something is very strange is happening in the prison, and that Jolyne needs to be aware of something going on. So she proceeds to explain that there's clearly that's for that reason that she can't meet with the prisoner, because there's something else afoot, and whoever this prisoner is and whoever this visitor is, it could be a problem. Like, it could be a problem for everyone. But Jolyne then proceeds to explain that the visitor could be her mom, that she wants to go in and visit with the mom. So regardless of what this person said, what this kid says, she is going to meet with the visitor. At which point the kid realizes that there's nothing he can really do to dissuade Jolyne from going into the visiting room. So instead, he does the next best thing he can do, which is hand her an object that he believes will be able to help her. And at which point, you know, he retreats back in the trash can so that nobody can actually, you know, see him. Of course, Jolyne is a little bit confused as to what that whole meeting was about, but then is even more bewildered when she discovers that the thing this kid gave her is a strange hip bone, like visibly melted in appearance, but some sort of bone. Like, it's not clear what this thing is yet. But of course, Jolyne quickly realizes that this bewildered that she's been handed a bone. She has no idea why. But it's this point where the guard then proceeds to come back out of the visiting room and tells her that her visitor is ready for her. At which point she proceeds to put the bone in her pocket and proceeds to go inside the go inside the visiting room. But is then shocked to discover that the person who came to visit is not her mother, but her father. Jotaro Kujo has returned to the series again, and he's of course gotten an updated redesign for the series. So I will picture him again, but he has gotten an updated redesign for Stone Ocean. He's wearing a new outfit, but it's otherwise the same character we've followed for the past several arcs now. So yeah, we see. So he appears. And he of course asks. He's in the room. He's in the visiting room. Jolyne is of course shocked to see him, but he then asks her if she's been taking good care of the pendant that he gave her. At which point, and if her mother didn't give it to her, Jolyne is of course very visibly shocked as to what her father is doing here. Of course, obviously pointing out the obvious that, you know, we do see a flashback, which apparently was moved up but shortened from later in which was moved up but shortened, but it shows that it shows the story how Jotaro actually left his family, which is that apparently He left when she was a lot younger. So when she was not necessarily little, but when she was a teenager, and how she was arrested for stealing a car. At which point, yeah, he walked out on the family. Like, it's not clear why. It's Jotaro, so I imagine he had some good reason, but from the context, it's clear that, he's seemingly a deadbeat dad who's only now appearing in his family's life, which is, of course, causes Jolyne a lot. Jolyne, of course, takes that about as well as you'd expect. She's obviously pretty pissed off that, that Jotaro suddenly re-entered her life when with seemingly no reason or explanation. And of course, Amelie beats the guard into submission, which of course knocking him out, before proceeding to explain that she would rather be disciplined than meet with her father. At which point, and of course also for good measure, she proceeds to kick the guard a couple of times, pointing out that it's only fair since he hit her multiple times. So at which point she proceeds to demand to know what Jotaro is actually doing in the prison, what Jotaro is actually doing here, why he suddenly decided to visit. But he then proceeds to just kind of instruct her to sit down, which of course she is a little bit confused about. But she is of course still angry, and of course. Again, of course, she's not really in heeding Jotaro's instructions to sit down right away. She continues to kick the guard, but then he proceeds to explain why he actually came to meet with her in the prison, which is that she proceeds to explain that Romeo wasn't in fact the person that sent her to the prison, which of course catches her attention, and of course it's to this point where she does indeed sit down and finally decide to hear Jotaro out. At which point Jotaro explains the true story of what's going on. At which point he proceeds to produce a picture, and it's revealed to actually be the man that we met previously, whose name is revealed to be John Gallier, and John Gallier is revealed to have been the true mastermind behind Jolyne being in prison. Jolyne is of course visibly shocked at this, and demands to know why. And of course he proceeds to explain. Jotaro proceeds to explain that he orchestrated everything. Obviously the passerby being in front of Romeo's car, but also paid off her lawyer so that she would actually go to prison. So of course that this causes Jolyne to immediately realize that this guy clearly has some sort of vendetta toward her, and is shocked that he would destroy the life of someone he doesn't even know, demands to know why he would do something like that. At which point, it explains that it's not because he doesn't know her personally, but does explain that it's because that she is in fact Jotaro's daughter. At which point he proceeds to explain that obviously he doesn't name drop anything, but he does explain that he defeated Dio all the way about 20 years ago, and that's who was a major nemesis of the Joestar bloodline. He then proceeds to explain that she's part of a larger bloodline with everybody, with a long history of being able to inspire others, but also explains that innate ability to inspire others also comes with a lot of people that want to hold grudges. As case in point, he does explain that he defeated Dio, who was a longtime enemy of the Joestar family, but also proceeds to explain that John Gallier was one of Dio's henchmen. So he didn't show up in part 3, but he was part of but he does have a blind fanaticism with Dio, and does explain that Dio that he is going to try and take out the Joestar bloodline. In response to, of course, Dio being defeated by Jotaro, but and of course does proceed to explain that the guy is a sniper, and that he is absolutely capable of taking them out, which of course causes Jolyne to become a little confused. But he then proceeds to explain that John Gallier is a prisoner in Green Dolphin Street Prison, which means he is, of course, locked up on the men's side. We've already established that, but and then proceeds that he orchestrated the whole thing from prison just so he can get a chance to take out Jolyne. So, this, of course, causes Jolyne to be very confused, obviously be very confused. She has no idea why this guy would come after them. But also is a bit more confused about the fact that, it doesn't really make any sort of sense how he would have weapons in prison. But Jotaro, of course, points out that, obviously he could smuggle it, as she puts it, essentially prisoners are not allowed to have even so much as pens without being supervised. So the fact that this guy has a gun, possibly multiple, is very concerning to her, and pointing out that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But of course, this is this point where Jotaro then proceeds to explain that he does explain that it shouldn't be possible, but there are ways to get around that. First and foremost, he does explain that guns can be separated down to pieces. They can be disassembled for storage. They're disassemblable for storage, or at least most models are. So he proceeds to explain that. He proceeds to explain the obvious that he could have simply just disassembled several of his guns, smuggled them in a piece at a time through various objects, and then paid off the guards to not search them, so that he could actually get access to his guns. So and of course this causes Jolyne to be even more concerned. But of course, Jotaro then proceeds to explain that it shouldn't be too much of a problem because obviously everybody he then proceeds to explain the obvious that she then proceeds to just kind of ask her if her stand is awakened yet. She, of course, has no idea what a stand is. Obviously, as established in previous episodes, she is new to the whole idea of stands, which implies that Jotaro deliberately held it from her if he knows how stands work and didn't explain it to her. So, but he does proceed to ask her, of course, if she has manifested her stand yet, and then proceeds to explain that everyone in the Joestar bloodline, or at least most of them, are capable of manifesting stands if they possess the willpower for them. At which point he proceeds to ask if, anything came about when she interacted with the pendant that he sent her. And of course, Jolyne's face tells Jotaro all he needs to know, and realizes that yes, his daughter has indeed developed her stand. So, and of course, realizing that her power is indeed called a stand, does point out that that obviously it would be that is very that it is, of course, very useful information to have. But then Jotaro then points out that what he wants her to do is use her stands to successfully break out of prison, and points out that he's going to do his best to get her out of prison as well, pointing that she shouldn't be in here. He points at the very obvious that he's going to do everything he can, even if he has to go above the law to do so. Jolyne, of course, then proceeds to point out that she is, of course, she is not interested in any of Jotaro's help, pointing out that he's only now deciding to be a father. Obviously, he walked out on the family, so him now deciding to be a father is kind of insulting. And she does point out the obvious that she has since left. She has since forgotten about him. So she put him out of sight and out of mind. So she doesn't really care about her father anymore. So and does point out that he's a marine, we also find out he's a marine biologist, which was established previously. I don't really have a good place of putting that, but he is a marine biologist. But of course, Jolyne is, of course, upset. But then, as she kind of leaves to go and try and find a prison guard to transfer her, because obviously she just beat the shit out of the one that was supposed to let her in or out. It's at this point where Jotaro starts to realize something is off. Obviously, Jolyne is no longer wearing her handcuffs, which implies something happened to them. But also, they're in a room with a faulty air conditioner, and it is dripping a lot. It has been steadily dripping a lot more than it's supposed to. So that's also weird. But then, what finally makes him realize that something is definitely not right is the fact that the guard that Jolyne beat the shit out of smokes, and his cigarette brand is different as well. Which finally makes him realize something is not right, and that proceeds to instruct Jolyne to get away from the door, but ultimately too late. She winds up getting shot. And of course, it's this point where JoJo realizes he needs to protect his daughter, at which point he immediately stands up and summons Star Platinum. He uses its ability to stop time to try and save Jolyne, but then realizes that Jolyne doesn't need his help. As it turns out, Stone Free reflexively formed a either Jolyne or Stone Free did this, but Jolyne used Stone Free's ability to create a mesh weave to protect herself, which meant that while she did get shot, it won't be fatal. So she of course then proceeds to JoJo, realizing that his daughter doesn't need his help, then proceeds to undo his time stop, and Jolyne of course proceeds to go flying, but does catch herself. So at which point you wonder what the hell that was. And JoJo, and what's interesting is that JoJo and Jolyne of course have a very interesting back dynamic here, where from this point, obviously Jolyne and JoJo don't have the best father-daughter relationship, so like that's been established, but of course this ultimately results in them repeatedly going back and forth with one another every time JoJo tries to give her practical instruction. So of course he does proceed to tell her to of course get away from the door. And of course, this is responded to with Jolyne telling JoJo not to order her around, but she does tell her to get away from the door. At which point, and keep close to the wall, pointing out that there's no way to get through. That there's no way hoping that there's no visible line of sight. At which point, he does of course ask Jolyne if there's any windows or anything nearby that could potentially that could potentially be used. And it's at this point, and we find out that Jolyne explains that yes, there are several windows, but they're all barred. There's no way in and out of them. But does point out that it's a little bit if of course JoJo then explains that it's likely John Gallier that just shot her. But with of course Jolyne pointing out that should be impossible, pointing out that obviously John Gallier, he's all the way on the men's side of the prison. There's no way he can reach them from over here with his gun. But of course, JoJo points out that it's possible if with both a gun and an ability. With him reasonably assuming that John Gallier might be a stand user, which is how he was able to shoot them from clear across the other side of the prison. At which point he does instruct Jolyne to keep an eye out and look for anything sort of weird. Of course, Jolyne, of course, once again insists that he doesn't order her around. But she does start doing as JoJo asks anyway, and they do eventually find something strange: a small stand that kind of looks like a satellite called Manhattan Transfer. It's not listed in the episode, but it is, what the stand is called. I feel like for the sake of being thorough, I would at least give you the name. But Manhattan Transfer is JoJo does of course point out that this is likely John Gallier's stand, but they don't know what it does yet. Like they obviously point out that they shouldn't engage. JoJo of course points out that they shouldn't engage because that could potentially reveal that what this thing could potentially is. But of course Jolyne proceeds to not heed her father's instruction and tries to use Stone Free to try to use a string to attach a string to it to kind of make it move, but to try and kind of attach to it to see what she can do with it. But it just drifts completely out of the way. Like Manhattan Transfer is not affected, and of course JoJo then proceeds to tell her that she shouldn't have engaged with it because they still don't know what it does. But does proceed to point out that it doesn't seem like it was doesn't seem like it was moved at all in accordance with the string, so that Jolyne just tried to shoot at it. So of course does point out that it seems to be drifting listlessly on the air currents. But Jolyne does notice, but also notice that it is also drifting listlessly with purpose. It seems like it's floating aimlessly, but it does seem like it's at least searching for something. So and she does wonder what it is that it could possibly be. But they of course do have to keep their voice down because, as JoJo explains, there's a good possibility that the stand will be able to hear them. So they do keep their voices down. But they look out, wonder, well, what could this stand possibly be doing here? But as they're trying to figure this out, unfortunately, what happens is the prisoner that Jolyne beat the crap out of gets up, and he is of course pissed he gets up. He is very much telling Jolyne that he will be disciplined, but not before he beats her to death. So, and of course declares that Jolyne Cujo will be punished, which of course causes the stand causes Manhattan Transfer to immediately perk up, and of course it's this point, and of course Jotaro realizing the issue and realizing that if this guy doesn't calm down soon, that the stand is of course going to attack. That the stand is going to immediately attack them. So he immediately pushes Jolyne out of the way. He winds up getting shot through the shoulder while the guard is killed instantly. It shoots him through the head. He is instantly killed. And both men collapse, which causes Jolyne to realize that they're dealing with something serious here. So that is of course the end of part 1 of The Visitor. Part 2 will be whenever I get around to reviewing this again. But part 2 is fun. But yeah, we're gonna get to part 2. But yeah, it's interesting. This kid, I don't know what his deal is, but clearly something. Like he's obviously something strange with him. He not only is he able to appear and disappear in and out of the prison whenever he wants, but it's clear that he lives in the that's clearly he's living in the prison if he's able to hang around here. But more to the point, the fact that he carries around bones is also weird. So there's something weird with this kid, but it is kind of interesting seeing the dynamic between Jotaro and Jolyne. Obviously, we don't know what Jotaro's, obviously Jotaro is a bit of a deadbeat dad because he walked out on his family. We don't know why yet, but that's the interesting thing. We know from previous arcs that Jotaro is very responsible and very diligent. So it doesn't make sense for him to suddenly, not be irresponsible and walk out on his family. That doesn't really make any sort of sense. So there's clearly something weird. Also, something I should point out is that people have noticed that part three Joseph and part 4 Joseph feel a little bit off. I've noticed that some people think that the writing doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I can absolutely see that. But yeah, I didn't really have a good place to put that. But yeah, the point is there's sometimes the character there's some characters inconsistencies. So I feel like that's a good point to point out. Like obviously, that's part of what Joseph's arc in part 2 was. But and then part 3 and then part 4 onward, he had an interesting arc, but where he loved a different woman. But yeah, it's something interesting. It's my point being that sometimes Hirokazu Araki just kind of makes up whatever he thinks will be a good story and not necessarily what makes sense for the characters. So I'm not entirely sure what it's possible that Jotaro did something out of character where he walked out on his family. I don't personally buy that because that doesn't track with how Jotaro thinks. He's obviously grown into a decent young man. He's very responsible. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that this would be how this is how he acts and operates. So I'm going to guess that there's some sort of ulterior reason for why he left the family beyond just being a deadbeat dad. Unless I'm told otherwise, there's clearly something else. So I don't know. Given the conversation he has, it's clear that he was it's possible that he may have been trying to protect Jolyne from his enemies. That may be the explanation behind it. I don't know. But yeah, there's something weird. There's weird stuff going on. But yeah, should be interesting. But yeah. In any case, that is going to do it for today, of course. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. If you enjoyed this review, what did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Over on my Discord, of course, link is in the description. We also have a Minecraft server over there if you want to go hang out in that. Be sure to go and check out my Discord. Be sure to go and, of course, check out the videos linked in the end screen as well. Top video's most recent video. It may or may not be this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, because that helps me beat the algorithm. So please go do that. Be sure to go and check out my Twitch. We stream Saturdays and Sundays. We also stream over here, but that helps me get closer to Twitch affiliate, which does help out a ton. So please go do that. Go and check out my Patreon. Go and, of course, check out my Patreon. That helps fund future projects. It does help support me. I would appreciate it if you were to go do that. And, of course, finally, be sure to check out Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm trying not to use Twitter as much, but you can absolutely go use that. For reasons I've already explained, Elon bought it. He's not being very responsible with it. And also be sure to go and check out, and of course, Blue Sky is of course not owned by Elon Musk. So I recommend doing that. It's also a lot better for your mental health in terms of how it operates. So I recommend going to check that out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!